Good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Mathis, Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women. I am here this evening at 633 Pennsylvania Avenue, the historic home of NCNW. NCNW is very proud to present what we call WEP, or the Women's Empowerment Program. Tonight is the latest in a series of monthly webinars and activities aimed at helping women become their vision of themselves as successful entrepreneurs. As you know, if you're a member of NCNW, our mission is to lead, advocate for, and empower women of African descent, their families, and communities. We carry out the mission based on what we call Four for the Future, the vision of our national chair, Ingrid Saunders-Jones. Whether it is eliminating health disparities, promoting science, technology, engineering, arts, and math education, advocating for sound public policy like clean water for Flint or sensible gun regulation, NCNW is here for you. One of the four pillars of our work is economic prosperity with a special emphasis on entrepreneurship. You may know that the number of African American firms grew 600% over the past couple of decades. Today, there are 2.2 million companies owned by Black women. NCNW is proud to present information to help you make the most of your resources and assets. On behalf of Ms. Jones, our National President and Chair of NCNW, and Ms. Paulette Norville-Lewis, National Program Chair, it's my privilege to welcome you to the Women's Empowerment Program and to invite you to consider joining NCNW. We have a wonderful moderator for tonight's discussion. She is Belinda Pedroso, one of the Chief Financial Officers for Facilities at Kennesaw State University. I said one of, she is the CFO for Facilities at Kennesaw State University. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, former president of the CAP section of NCNW, and a current member of our National Program Committee. Belinda will introduce our presenter for this evening, and I hope you enjoy it and get something out of it, and most importantly, put it to use. Belinda?
Thank you so much, Janice. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. You always make me feel so good.
Well, that's because you are good.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I am so excited that you joined us for tonight's Women's Empowerment Program. This is a really great presentation, and I'm very, very pleased to moderate this presentation and have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Collins, who is our speaker for tonight. So I've read her bio before everyone else, so I am totally in awe. I'm going to be her fan from now on. I may start stalking her on Facebook or something. But I am pleased to introduce Dr. Jennifer Collins. She's a very accomplished professional, very knowledgeable, and very experienced. So we are excited to have her share her vast knowledge on this webinar tonight. So now that I've bragged on her, let me tell you a little bit about who she is. Dr. Collins is the Assistant Dean of Accreditation and Assessment and an Associate Professor of Management in the School of Business and Industry at Florida A&M University. She was most recently appointed as the Quality Enhancement Plan Director for the university. This young lady holds a PhD in Management from Florida Atlantic University, as well as a Master's and a Bachelor's of Science in Finance from Florida State. As a professor, she teaches human resource management, organizational behavior, and strategic management. Through her studies or her course room studies, she teaches a strategic management course, which she has developed in partnership with the Small Business Development Center at Florida A&M. So she has great credentials, but she's also done some stuff before that. So prior to joining the faculty at A&M, she taught at Florida State University for 12 years, also worked with the state of Florida in 2 capacities, as a tax auditor with the Florida Department of Revenue and as a Quality Assurance Program Administrator for the Florida Commission of Transportation for the Disadvantaged, where she was responsible for oversight of federal and state funding. Dr. Collins is an independent business owner as well. So her knowledge that she's sharing with you is also what she practices in her life. She is the owner of J. Collins Consulting, which specializes in strategic planning as well as organizational management and talent development. And she has consulted for several private and governmental agencies in Florida, including the Florida Department of Financial Services. So, well, without any further ado, I present Dr. Jennifer Collins. Dr. Collins.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Belinda, for that wonderful introduction. I am excited to share with you all tonight information regarding the 8A certification program. I want to thank Janice for the opportunity to participate in this webinar series. And we'll get started by giving an overview of our session for tonight, and then we will have questions as we progress through the webinar. If at any time you have questions, please place them in the chat if it's not at a time where we're taking questions. So thank you all again for joining us tonight, and we will get started with our presentation on the certification process for 8A and how we can use the 8A certification process to actually level the playing field for small disadvantaged businesses. So for tonight's discussion, we will have an overview of what the 8A certification process is. We'll talk about some of the benefits of the 8A certification, and then we'll walk through some questions around eligibility for the 8A certification process. We will do an overview of the application process, and we'll talk about how to best navigate that process. And we'll close out with some tips for success, as well as opening it up for questions. So our first topic for tonight is around 8A certification and knowing exactly what 8A certification is. It is a federal government program that attempts to provide disadvantaged businesses with assistance in securing federal government contracts. The process is an electronic process where small disadvantaged businesses submit a packet to be included in this program. This program has several benefits, and those benefits include the ability to actually compete for set-aside contracts. Also, businesses in this program get a business opportunity specialist that helps them to navigate the federal contracting process. In addition to that, the 8A certification program provides participants with the opportunity to actually provide to form joint ventures with other established businesses through their unique mentor-protege program. The 8A certification process or program actually allows small disadvantaged businesses to receive technical assistance and management from the SBA and from the program. In addition to that, for 8A certification, you actually get to compete for contract awards under multiple socioeconomic programs as they apply to your small business. So what we'd like to do at this time is talk about the steps for the process. So the steps for the process actually appear to be relatively straightforward. However, we're going to talk about some ways to help us to navigate that process. So the first step for 8A certification is that small businesses should create a profile at sam.gov, and the information that's required will actually vary based on your business structure and your participation in other small business administration programs. The next step is that once you've created a profile in the sam.gov website, then you would need to go to certified.sba.gov and go through the certification process. Once your business has been certified, you will need to go back into the SAM system and update that system showing that your business is in the 8A program. If you're accepted into the 8A program, the business profile in the dynamic small business search will show your approval date and exit date for the program. The 8A certification program lasts approximately 9 years. You can be in the program for a maximum of 9 years. And it's beyond the scope of this webinar, but it is important for businesses who participate in this 8A certification program to actually think through, prior to exiting or graduating from the 8A, the steps that they need to have in place to be successful once they've graduated from the program. The final step for participating in this certification process is that each year, as an 8A certified business, you will be required to submit annual reviews to keep your business in good standing in the program. So at this time, I will pause to see if there are any questions on the steps or the benefits, and then we'll move into determining eligibility.
So far, we haven't had any questions that come through, so I would encourage you to move along, and as soon as the questions come through, I'll raise my hand.
Thank you so much, Belinda. So we will now move into eligibility. So the first question, and there is an eligibility website link on the sba.gov website. And so these questions that we are going to ask tonight tie directly back to the questions that are asked on the sba.gov website. So the first question that is asked is that a business has to be the owner has to be a qualifying individual who's applying for SBA. And so to be a qualifying individual, the owner must be a U.S. citizen, a person born or naturalized in the United States. And we need to make note that resident aliens and holders of permanent visas are not considered citizens for program purposes. So you must be a person born or naturalized in the United States to be eligible for the 8A certification. So that is the first hurdle that businesses have to cross in order to enter the program. The next question that has to be answered is ownership. So 51% of the ownership of the firm has to be held by individuals, the qualifying individuals. So they must unconditionally and directly own and control at least 51% of the business. The 51% ownership may not be through another business entity. So it has to be that qualifying individual owns 51% of the business directly. And control means that both the long-term decision-making and the day-to-day management of the business are controlled by the qualifying individuals. So the 51% ownership has to be by a qualifying individual. The next question for eligibility relates to the firm's organization structure. So here, what has to be in place is that a firm must be a firm that is organized for profit. So nonprofit entities are not eligible to participate in most of the SBA small business programs. The firm may be in the legal form of an individual proprietorship. It can be a partnership, a limited liability company, an S Corp, or a C Corp. Any of these for-profit organizations are eligible to apply for 8A certification. There are some exceptions, and the rule does not necessarily apply to community development corporations or businesses that are interested in participating as mentors in the mentor protege program. Our next question, do you affirm that neither this firm nor any of its owners have ever been debarred or suspended by any federal entity? So this question will be asked in determining certification of a business. Debarred or suspended firms owned by debarred or suspended individuals are ineligible for admission to SBA small business programs. Our next question relates to the location of firms. And so this question states that a firm has to have a place of business in the U.S. and operate primarily within the United States, or make a significant contribution to the U.S. economy through payment of taxes and use of American products, materials, or labor. So firms that qualify for 8A certification are going to be those firms that are located within the U.S. or outside of the U.S., but they make a significant contribution to the U.S. economy through payment of taxes or use of American products, materials, or labor. Our next question relates to being considered a small company, a small business, and this is based on the North American Industry Classification System. In order to, if you want to look at the size of the organization, you can refer to the federal regulation on small business size, but size standards are expressed in terms of annual receipts for services that the NAIC codes and in numbers of employees for the manufacturing NAICS codes. So that code is what you would refer to in terms of knowing whether or not your business qualifies as a small business. Also, you can look at the information in both the federal regulation 121.104 and 121.106. In addition to the other requirements for eligibility, the program also asks questions around the individuals, and this question relates to participating in small business administration programs for economically disadvantaged programs under the 8A Business Development Guidelines. So for the individual who applies for as that qualifying individual, that individual's total assets must be valued at $4 million or less. The individual's net worth has to be less than $250,000, and the individual's personal income must be $250,000 or less. So those are the individual requirements for applying for 8A certification. Our next question also relates to the individual, and this question is around, again, that qualifying individual and ethnic background. So the ethnic backgrounds that qualify are Black American, Asian Pacific American, Hispanic American, Native American, and subcontinent Asian Americans. So these are the categories, the ethnic categories that qualify for 8A certification. Our next question relates to being socially disadvantaged because of bias that has been experienced by the qualifying individual. So if you're not a member of one of the presumed groups, you may still be eligible for admission on a case-by-case basis, which is determined by the SBA, if you can demonstrate that you have experienced some type of bias of chronic and substantial nature. So 8A certification is sometimes granted to people outside of that presumed group. And one of the questions that you will need to address is whether or not the firm has previously been certified as an 8A participant. So the 8A certification program is a one-time use program. So individuals can only apply one time, and firms can only apply one time for this program.
So,
Also,
Dr. Collins, I hate to interrupt you, but there's a pressing question about something that you just said. You can only apply one time. What if, this is the scenario,
okay,
a person had their own individual business, and then that person became the partner, person A and person B became partners. Would the 8A eligibility previously acquired by person A, would it also carry over to person B, or would person B become ineligible because person A is already 8A certified?
okay. So if person A is 8A certified, and person A and person B form a new company,
Yes.
and that in that new company, if person A is the qualifying individual, meaning that they have 51% ownership, then the company would be ineligible because person A has already participated in the program. If the new company, if in the new company person B is the qualifying individual, meaning that they have 51% of the ownership, the company would be eligible because person B has not used that one-time eligibility.
Excellent. Because the follow-up question right behind that was, can more than one person own 51% of a company? And your response to that is, I guess if they were partners, they equally own 51% of the company. Is that an eligibility issue for 8A certification?
So if in order the eligibility be 51%, if one person owns 51%, then the other owners have to divide or hold that other 49%. So there would not be an instance where both people are 51% owners.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so our next question related to eligibility is actually using that eligibility and other qualifications that are important is that the owner has to manage the day-to-day operations and also make long-term decisions. So again, that qualifying individual has to be the person who is managing the operations and also making long-term decisions. All of the principals in the organization, the other owners, also must demonstrate good character. And so that good character is decided upon by the reviewer of the application. And finally, the company has to show potential for success. So the goal of the program is that within that max of 9 years, that those small disadvantaged businesses would be mentored to the point that when they graduate from 8A, that they would be able to secure government contracts on their own outside of the 8A program. So the businesses that are selected into the program have to show potential for success, and they have to be able to perform successfully on the government contracts. So that
related, excuse me, I'm sorry, but related, I'm so excited. And our participants are so excited also. So related to what you just mentioned about participation in the program, there were two questions that came up. The first question is the eligibility based on qualifying through one or the other of categories? Like, can you be in a disadvantaged sort of Black American or one of the protected categories and have a net worth of less than $250,000, or just have a net worth of less than $250,000? So I guess our Belinda Shannon is trying to understand sort of how you match that criteria together on a matrix. Is it either or both, or a combination of them?
So it is a combination. So the person would have to have the income qualifications, and they would also have to fall into one of the ethnic groups.
Awesome. So the next question relates to qualifications as well. Are retirement savings potentially counted as towards your net worth?
Yes. So you have to, the owner of the business has to submit tax information, and they have to submit documentation on their net worth. So any income minus your expenses or liabilities is what would be used to calculate net worth.
So the follow-up to that is, if it's in a retirement plan and it's not calculated as a part of your tax information, but say it's in a qualified tax plan or a qualified, retirement plan that you previously worked for the government, and you have not started drawing down on that, like a 403B or a 457, something like that. Is that also counted towards your net worth? Or is it?
If you are not drawing on it, it's just there, but it's not, you are not receiving from that, then it would not be included.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of questions about that, the net worth, as well as the sort of qualifications. And it might be helpful at the end, we could just do like a top three qualifications, but I'll stop right there and please proceed.
Okay. And that actually was the last slide related to 8A certification, the qualifications. And so when you go to SBA.gov, just like we walk through those questions, SBA.gov, there is a certification option, and it will actually walk you through the exact same questions and provide the information. And at the end, it will tell you whether or not your business is 8A qualified. And one of the things that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the presentation is that my work with the Small Business Development Center here at Florida A&M University, we've worked with several clients who were applying for the 8A certification process. If you just happen to Google 8A certification, what you'll find is that there are a lot of companies out there who offer services to help walk you through the process and help you with that application process for a fee. However, you can work with the Small Business Administration office in your areas, or you can work with the Small Business Development Centers that may be in your area. And using those services for the Small Business Development Center, there is no charge to the customer. So the Small Business Development Center provides services to their customers or their clients at no charge to the clients. However, if you were to go to a law firm or another company that actually walks you through the process, most of them charge a fee for their services. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that there's some opportunities out there for assisting you through this process that are at no charge to you.
So we have a very savvy audience, and just as a follow-up to what you just said, those services that you're mentioning that the SBA offers, are those services similar to what one may experience as part of a mentor-protege program, or are they different?
So the services that the SBA will provide will be walking you through the application process. The mentor protege would be the small business being paired with an established business, and then that established business owner would mentor that small business in how to secure federal government contracts.
So by that, your response is that the mentor protege program, you've already been accepted into the 8A program.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And I do have another question. This is, again, eligibility. I don't want to get too far. Well, and it sort of borders on what you're getting ready to talk about now, which is the application process. So Miss Lucinda Blue has asked, does the SBA provide you with all the necessary forms to complete and how to submit them if you don't go to an attorney? Let's just say you go the SBA route and you request the services. Would they be able to guide you through the application process as well?
Yes. So the local SBA office will provide you, the process is completely electronic. So they will walk you through the application process and guide you through the documentation that's needed for the application. Does that answer the question?
Yes, you addressed the question. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. So if there are not any other questions regarding the eligibility, let's talk about the application. So the application for the 8A certification process, this is just a screenshot of one page of the 8A program development. So it tells you just a little bit of information. It is so important with the 8A process to submit a complete application. The application has to have all of the documentation that's requested in order for it to be processed. The other piece is if you decide to use a third party person or organization, then you have to fill out that representative and fees section to actually show who that person or organization was and the fees that are associated with your application. So how much did they charge you? Some of the important pieces in terms of supporting documentation, you have to have your state filings as far as your corporation. So, whatever the state requirements are for filing for your organization, then you would have to have those. You would need the firm's financial statements, also profit and loss statements, and then individual tax returns and the firm's federal tax returns. You also have to disclose any federal, non-federal, and private sector contracts, any lease agreements that you have. You have to demonstrate that you have signature authority on the firm's bank accounts. You have to show proof of contribution used to acquire the ownership. So each owner has to show how they were able to secure that percentage of ownership in the company. You also need to provide proof of any transfer of assets to and from the firm, and proof of any transfer of assets to or from any of the owners over the past 2 years. So everything related to ownership of the firm has to be provided and should be transparent. Some of the other supporting documentation that's needed includes the governing documents that are signed by the principals of the organization. If you are an S Corp or C Corp, then you would want to provide the bylaws, operating and partnership agreement. So if you have a partnership, you would need to provide that information as well. Stock certificates and ledgers of the organization must be provided. You have to provide the proof of the social and economically disadvantaged manager. So you have to provide proof of that. You would need to include a resume, a statement of personal history, proof of your citizenship, duties within the firm, and how much time you're devoting. So that goes back to demonstrating that the individual who's applying is the person who's responsible for day-to-day management. You have to also provide list of other business interests that you may have. Financial information for all principals needs to be signed and dated. So you need to make sure that the tax returns and the information that's provided, actually you have signed information. All of the assets, liabilities, real estate, and other personal property has to be included in your packet, including going back to where we talked about if you're transferring assets, any assets that have been transferred, and as it stated in the previous slide, you need to show that for the last 2 years. The principals of the company include owners who have more than 10% ownership in the organization, any officers, directors, members, partners, and key employees. So that is the documentation that's needed to go along with your application. So I'll take another pause and see if there's some other questions.
As a matter of fact, there are. So
Okay.
that seems very comprehensive,
Yes.
and it seems like a lot of information. So I have a couple of questions about this. Some of us are new in starting a business. Navigating this process and pulling together all the documents. If I am new and I'm just in the beginning phase of my business and creating my business and getting organized, should I become, or how, at what process in establishing my business should I apply for an 8A certification?
So, one of the things that's important for the 8A program is that your business you need to be able to demonstrate that your business will succeed once you graduate from the program. So, for new companies, you would need to have some record of company operation, and you could use a business plan or previous federal filings to demonstrate that your business is capable of being sustainable once the program is over. So I couldn't necessarily give you a time frame, but I would say that you do need to have some type of history of the business operating. And it's not that the business you have to show that you have been profitable outside of 8A, but you need to show the potential of your business to be sustained after the 8A program.
That is very encouraging because some of the documentation did look a little overwhelming, but it's very encouraging to know that we can have our business plans in place. And it's very critical. I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one, to talk about our business plan and demonstrating that our business plan has potential of really launching a very successful program. So the follow-up question was, can 8A, my participation in 8A, Tammy asked this question, would this be something that would benefit me in launching or expanding my business outcome?
So launching, it would not be because, again, you have to show a history of being in business. One of the things that they look at in the application process is are you showing a profit? And so you need to be able to show that you've had some profit in the past 3 years prior to your application. Is it good for actually expanding your business? Absolutely. So if you've been established, you can demonstrate that you've had a profit for the last 3 years. You can demonstrate that your business has the potential to be sustained after 8A graduation, then your business would be a candidate.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. And again, these questions are about the application process since we're talking about the application process. So both Lucinda and Carly have a similar question, and they wanted to get a sense of, on average, and considering if I have all my paperwork together, about what is the time frame, what sort of expectation should they have about a time frame to actually get engaged in that 8A process and to become certified?
So average time frame to complete the application process?
Mm-hmm.
The question? Okay. So it would depend on who you're working with. There's if you're going with a private company that you're paying to work through the process for you, I would say that process might be shorter. The clients that we've worked with, it's typically taken probably 2 to 3 months to gather all of the information, review all of the information, put the information into the system. So if you're working with if you're working with a Small Business Development Center or SBA, it will just depend on the number of clients that they're working with at the time. But I would say 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Well, that gives a sense of expectation. And then the question right behind that was, and again, our audience is very perceptive and focused on the bottom line, sort of. can you provide some examples of the types of service or businesses that could benefit most from this 8A program? Is it a specific type of profession, let's say construction or finance or janitorial services, that type of profession, or some specific type of service? What type of service most benefit?
Great question. So for the most part, when we look at the 8A business types, one of the things that you'll see in the NAICS codes of businesses that qualify are going to be those businesses that provide some type of, it could be construction, or there were some categories around frozen foods. There are a few categories around services, but for the most part, it is going to be things related to construction, some around technology, software. There is on the SBA's website, you can actually download a list of the NAICS codes that qualify as for the program.
Thank you. So yeah, let's get into the certification process.
Okay. So in navigating that process, some things that are important. You want to make sure that your application does not raise any red flags. So some ways that you can avoid those red flags relate to making sure that the qualifying disadvantaged applicant can demonstrate that he or she is totally in control of the business. So it asks you to provide information on how you are involved in the functioning of the business. So it would be helpful if the qualifying individual actually has on their resume some detailed information on how they operate the business, how they're involved on a day-to-day basis in operating the business. So that's important. Operating agreements that show a disadvantaged owner actually makes the final decision on key aspects of the business. So, if there are other owners in the business, there need to be some operating agreements in place with those other principals or owners that shows that the person who is applying is the person who makes final decisions on the key aspects of the business. Also, voting rights and management, those need to be shown for that qualifying disadvantaged member as well. The next thing is that you need to demonstrate the ability to succeed, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the 8A program. So you want to be able to show SBA that you have more than one existing client already in place. You want to be able to demonstrate that you have profit for the last 3 years, or be able to, in detail, explain the ups and downs of your business. And again, having something in place to show that your business has the potential to grow will be important as well. Another piece may be that you may want to seek lines of credit to position yourself to be able to, but you also need to keep in mind that you need to manage that debt to equity ratio for your company, because that's something that will be viewed in your application. And the one piece that's very important is really being able to prove that you have an economic disadvantaged status. So in your personal statement, some recommend that you actually begin with your childhood background. If you have been economically disadvantaged from that point, then start there, which is not something we would normally think of. We would think to start with our business. But if you can show economic disadvantage throughout your lifetime, then that helps to establish that status for you in the application process. You want to highlight specific examples of where access to proper education systems may have been a part of your experience. You want to be able to discuss financial hardship of your parents if that's something that you think is of value or that it's true. You want to definitely make sure that you're very truthful in your application. You want to talk about any tough experiences that have impacted your life and your business. And you want to provide evidence of barriers to mainstream commercial and financial resources. So all of this is helping to establish that the firm has the economic disadvantage status. So we'll stop here and see if there are any questions, and then we'll close out with tips for success if there aren't any questions.
As a matter of fact, we do have several questions,
Okay.
and I'm going to paraphrase about 4 of them together, because the question was more specifically around the types of business that achieve the greatest success in the 8A program. So can you provide us with some feedback or where we could research those type of businesses that had greater success with eligibility than others? I mean, narrow us down into what is the 8A program most successful at expanding? What type of business?
I would have to do some research on that, on what the specific types of businesses that have been successful after the program. If we think about government contracting, if you and you look at the types of businesses that the government typically contracts with, it would probably be those that I mentioned earlier that are related to construction, technology. Those are the ones that are typically the ones that are going to that you're going to see in the government contracting arena, particularly for this program. But I will do some research and I can provide that information to you all later on.
Fair enough. That's fair enough, because we're pretty sure that the government contracts with a lot of different professionals around multiple types of services. So I know it's difficult for you to sort of narrow it down and just, spew off a list of different type of businesses right now, but I would appreciate it if you could provide that and we could get it back out to our audience. So another question was, and again, this is back to the process, about how long does it take for the 8A program to actually review my application?
It typically takes about 90 days for your application to be reviewed.
Okay. And in terms of where I live, so some of us, I'm in Atlanta, and I know you're not in Atlanta, but are there regional SBA offices that I could get to in a large city, or are they located in certain parts of the country?
There are regional SBA offices. If you go to sba.gov, you can search to see if there is one in your area. In addition to that, as I mentioned, the small business development centers are usually connected to, they're connected to universities. And so you could also look for small business development centers in your area as well.
Awesome. Okay. And As a matter of fact, I'm at a university where there is a small business economic development agency right here at Kennesaw State.
Great.
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. We get a lot of people come through. So this is sort of a guidance question, but it's around application. So some of our members are looking for guidance. Are there any sample type of applications that have already been completed that we might be able to view as we are doing our research? This would kind of give us some visual on what a successful application looks like.
I am not sure. Like for us, we can't release any information, on our clients. I'm not sure at the SBA if they have some samples that would not actually be an actual client. So some templates that they prepared.
Exactly, some templates, something that has like redacted information. We don't want to know whose application it is. I think we just want to get a sense of what does a successful, fully completed application look like, to sort of set expectations as we're applying and filling out our paperwork, what we need to achieve or what we need to aspire to. So the next question actually is on the slide that you're getting ready to present. What do you find are the greatest barriers to successfully completing the application?
Okay. So I'll go into those tips. I think the barriers are, as you all said earlier, there's so much documentation that's needed. And one of the pieces is not having a complete application, not being clear on your process, especially around the economically disadvantaged piece, and making sure that ownership is very clear, very transparent to SBA. It's one of the things that can help you with this process is that, again, the SBA district office is there to help you, and it would be wise to use or leverage those services that are provided, as well as establishing that relationship with the SBA. That piece is important because people are not accepted. I'm going to go back to the red flags. Not being able to show that you're a qualifying disadvantaged applicant is something that is important, as well as making sure that you can show that ownership of the company, that you hold that 51% ownership. And sometimes this piece becomes tricky when, there are two people who went into this business together. And now basically, instead of us saying we're splitting the business in half, one of us has to have dominant ownership over the other. And so in some instances, that could be a problem between the owners. So I would say that those are the barriers that most hinder people in this process.
And your tips for overcoming those barriers would include?
So the tips for overcoming the barrier around the ownership piece is that's something that probably, if you have a partnership and you all are talking about going through this process, then making sure that the people involved, everyone knows who is going to be that person who's going to be the qualifying individual, and then working through a way so that those that are not the qualifying individual don't feel as if that qualifying person is going to benefit more from the company than the other owners of the company. So you would want to establish that early on. One of the things that I can't emphasize enough is really working with the Small Business Administration district office and or a small business development center, where they can guide you through the process. Even if you decide that you want some outside counsel, you start with those services first and make sure that you've built this relationship with them so that they can guide you. They have seen other 8A certification applicants, and so they would be able to best look at your application and determine the things that may seem weak so that they can help you strengthen those pieces.
I think those are some really good points. And one of the things that you said, that the 3 C's, all through college, I would always remember our professor saying, remember your 3 C's: clarity, completeness, and concise. And that's what you just said. It has to be clear, it has to be complete, it has to be concise, it has to have real direction. I think that one of the really great things that you said, I mean, you said so many really great things that can help people. It's inspired me. I live in Atlanta, like I said, and SBA, there's an SBA regional office here. So one of the things that came to my mind while you were talking is that SBA has launched several millionaires in Atlanta. And that's because we have one of the largest airports in the world. So many people got their jump start through SBA programs in Atlanta, and the Atlanta airport was kind of like the catalyst. They had businesses there, different type of industrial businesses that started them on their road to success. So yeah, SBA can be a very successful conduit to move someone's company forward once they get the clarity and get their application complete and know and have some sort of conciseness, consistency in what they're doing.
Absolutely. I'm just such a big advocate of using the services that have been provided for us to be successful here at the Small Business Development Center. Being able to get that that guidance and that wisdom from consultants who are there for your success, I believe, is so important for individuals who have small businesses or in the process of starting a small business.
So I'll take some other questions from our audience. Some of them have come through, but we will entertain a few more questions as you all are ready. Just post them, and I'll be very, very happy to ask Dr. Collins. But in the meantime, Dr. Collins, I would like for you to sort of give us some of your maybe you do this as a profession, you have a great deal of experience and expertise. If you would give us your maybe top 5 things that would help us be most successful aside from the SBA, what do you look for as you're working with your clients and getting their business through an 8A program?
The things that I look for, the first one would be sustainability. So making sure that your business is a business that can be sustained after the program ends. And I think that's why the program requires you to demonstrate that you have at least one client. But you want to make sure that your business is sustainable. Also, another piece is good record keeping. So, from the documentation, you see that there are a variety of different documents that are required. And so it is so important for small businesses up front to establish a good record keeping system so that it's easy for them to generate profit loss statements. That type of information is vital. So making sure that you can provide that information. Also having some clear operational guidelines for the company. So, if you've established those at the beginning of your business, when it's time to move into that 8A certification process, it will be very easy for you to demonstrate who's involved in the day-to-day operation of the organization. And so I think that piece is important. And then really as a company, identifying your vision for the company, but also your identity as a small business. So where are we now as a company, and how do we see ourselves growing in terms of not just profitability for the company, but how do I see myself as an individual growing in this role? So I think those are the pieces that are important.
So those are really, really, I think, very, very good points to keep in mind, because very often we need to have someone get us through that piece of consultation, of just consulting. And so this is where this next question comes from. Do you think as a small business owner that it benefits us to work through our different processes using a consultant? Sort of what's your view on that?
So again, I'll go back to the Small Business Development Center. Our center here really is available to help small businesses work through those processes, which I think is great for a small business. So instead of me securing a consultant to help me set up my, for instance, my financial system and my financial management system, I can work with the Small Business Development Center, and they will provide training for managing my financial. So QuickBooks training, or whatever I need to manage my day-to-day operations of my organization. Most of that can be found at a Small Business Development Center, which again has no fee for the end user. And so my recommendation for small businesses, before you go and pay a consultant, is to reach out to a Small Business Development Center.
Thank you very much. That's great. And as you mentioned, before you pay the fee, there are resources available to us that are free before we get too far out there, and we can train ourselves as we go along. Do you have any final words for our audience? That was our last question. So any final words for our audience?
My final words would be to, if you're considering the 8A certification process, to not rush the process, to take your time as you complete your 8A application, verify, double check everything that you've done, and have several sets of eyes review it before you submit your final application. And just, continue to look at other opportunities. So, 8A certification is just one of the opportunities available through the Small Business Administration. So look for other opportunities related to women-owned small disadvantaged businesses, or other avenues to fund your business. But if you have a small business and you have a vision for your business growing and expanding, and it can be done through relationships with the federal government, then definitely explore those opportunities through Small Business Administration.
Do you know of any women's resource support groups that could sort of encourage us as we're, moving towards independent business ownership?
I know that typically local chambers, chambers of commerce, they usually have a women's group within the chamber. That is one place to reach out for assistance.
Absolutely. And being a chamber member myself, I do know that that is a fact. But we're so plugged into being online these days. I think a lot of people do feel a sense of comfort in connecting with people in social media and online through those type of resource groups. Well, Dr. Collins, this has really been a great presentation. I'd like to thank you so much. The Women's Empowerment Program thanks you. Our Executive Director, Janice Mathis, she thanks you. NCNW thanks you. And we would love to have you come back again and maybe talk to us about some other ideas, things that you do in terms of strategic consulting and organizational management. You're the pro. So, ladies and guests, thank you so much for joining us tonight for our webinar. And again, we have our webinars on the fourth Thursday of each month, beginning at 7 p.m. through 8:30 p.m. And we really do have some great topics like this one on 8A. So thank you very much, and everyone have a great night. And Dr. Collins, we look forward to receiving the follow-up information from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, great. We appreciate you and your time. Everyone have a great night, and we'll talk to you on the fourth Thursday next month.
Thank you, Belinda.
You are very welcome. Are we still live?
We are still live. Yes, ma'am. I will.
Janice, you muted.
Janice? Yes, I'm not quite sure what happened to Janice at the end. But let's see how many people we still have on. Still a number of people who are connected, so I guess I should probably end the session. And if we want to debrief or anything, we can do that through Janice's cell phone.
Thank you very much, and I'll talk to all of you this evening.
All righty.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.